I'm here with David McLaren from G&L in Fullerton, California, and it's a great pleasure to talk to you about the history and the present and the future of G&L guitars, starting with the legacy of Leo Fender. As G&L was founded in 1980 by Leo Fender and George Fullerton, and Leo worked here on this very ground until his passing in 1991. There's a lot of history going on. Like before that, in 65 till 79, there existed the CLF research company, and I would like to know the story of CLF and G&L guitars.
Well, thank you very much, Philippe. It's a pleasure to have you visit us here on Fender Avenue at the CLF Research Factory.
Yeah.
So this factory, its job was first making the Music Man Stingray guitar and bass, which were designed here by George Fullerton and Leo Fender. So they're kind of the first G&Ls. But if we back up further, CLF Research as a company was formed in 1966, and CLF stands for Clarence Leo Fender. Clarence Leo Fender Research.
Yeah. And
this was formed just after Leo Fender sold the Fender company to CBS in 1965. Now, between 1965 and 1970, Leo Fender was to continue as a paid consultant. So when CBS bought Fender, it's not like Leo Fender just goes, hey, good luck with that, guys, I'm gone. No, they needed the man who created the things, all the best-selling instruments, and helped to build that company. They needed Leo to stay around for a while. So for 5 years, between 65 and 70, Leo Fender was a consultant to CBS. Now, the sale was completed in April of 1965. It's kind of like when you hand the keys over. And in the coming months after that, CBS very quickly started to change things. They started to change managers, and people that had been very close to Leo, worked with Leo for a number of years, were starting to get pushed around. And while Leo was driving to work every day, he's Leo Fender and this is still Fender, it wasn't his company, and there was nothing he could do about the changes that CBS was making. Now, Leo thought he was going to continue developing new ideas for models, and of course helping him develop new techniques for manufacturing to make things more efficient, because much of Leo's work was to continue growing this business, which was growing like 20% a year and continually expanding manufacturing. So many of the little machines and things that we have here are things that he developed to help Fender production move more smoothly.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing was that when he saw them changing, they were putting more accounting people, more college-educated management type people, more people in suits.
Yeah.
He became kind of uncomfortable and realized I need to move out. I've sold my house, and the new owners, it's a different scene, and I need to move out.
Yeah.
So he bought a building nearby on Elm Street, and in January of 1966, he formed a new business, which was CLF Research, Clarence Leo Fender Research. And it was between 66 and 70 that Leo Fender continued his support for the Fender company, but through his CLF Research business. So he would still obviously visit Fender all the time, and people from Fender would visit him all the time. It was a frequent thing, but he kind of had his own new company with a little bit of distance now. It made him feel more comfortable, particularly as, like I said, the people factor. Management was changing, new managers coming in, and it quickly became a different company than the Fender he knew. So he was more comfortable operating with a little distance, even if it's just 1 mile.
Just 1 mile, yeah. So the MFD pickups, saddle lock bridge, dual Falcon vibrato expander switch, we could go on forever. Three-tone preamp, PTV circuit. Leo seemed to improve his classic designs like endlessly. Can you tell us about these and other typical improvements that make G&L instruments stand out as probably the best Leo Fender designs ever?
Well, thank you very much. I think Leo would find that complimentary. He would smile at hearing that. But Leo Fender's mission at G&L first, because this was just following Music Man.
Yeah.
So the first G&Ls were really what was to be the next Music Man product. So things like the magnetic field design pickup was going to be the next pickup tech for Music Man. The dual fulcrum vibrato was first designed and put on a Stingray guitar in 1979. So the things that are the core foundational features of G&L were just technologies that were going to be on Music Man. But of course, Music Man was also partially owned by Leo Fender. Oh, in the case of G&L and Music Man's origins, Leo Fender was the one with all the money, and so it was really his show. But the people that were with him kind of had disagreements, right? So oftentimes it's there's nothing wrong with the band's music, but the band members don't get along, right? So in the case of what happened here, this factory, the CLF Research Factory, which opened in 1976, first it was George and Leo doing development work in 1974 and 1975 on what these new guitars and basses were going to be, which was the first Stingray guitar and Stingray bass, and then the Sabre guitar and Sabre bass. But by 1979, there had become a very unhealthy relationship between the other Music Man managers, which is Forrest White and Tommy Walker. Both, of course, were old Fender guys, just like George Fullerton was an old Fender guy. But the Music Man guys thought that Music Man should own the factory, and Leo historically had kept his factory and his sales operations separate. Just like Fender Music Sales Inc. was different from Fender Musical Instruments, the factory. In this case, there was Music Man, which had already begun making amplifiers there in Santa Ana. That's a city very close. And then right nearby in Fullerton, then CLF Research becomes the guitar and bass maker. So you have two different camps, which are supposed to be acting as one together, but you have people that don't like each other, particularly Forrest and George. They really didn't like each other. But not only that, they had two different names. So it wasn't even the same where you have Fender Music Sales and you have Fender Musical Instruments, but they both say Fender. This one says Music Man, this one says CLF Research, and you have managers that don't like each other. It became too difficult. But the core foundational features that became what G&L was founded on were just the next features that they planned to introduce on Music Man. So when the disagreement became so strong that Leo Fender decided they have to separate these things, and then CLF Research will continue on with the new brand name, which he suggested to be George and Leo, G&L, George Fullerton and Leo Fender. Those features just changed into G&L, and here's a new brand, and here's a new headstock. It was really that simple. So CLF Research, he first began working on things for Fender, but those, particularly a guitar, which was really much of the way developed, didn't get completed, but we completed it years later. We could probably come back to that.
With the next question, you now also offer CLF models. So these are models that truly rely on the hand drawings that you still have here. These are really models that were intended to be released, but that you finally put out.
The models which I call the CLF Research versions, the CLF Research L2000 and CLF Research even S500. Really what those were is I wanted to have models that were really felt very intensive on Leo Fender's thought and George Fullerton's style of the time. So I wanted to feel like kind of distilled, if you know.
What's the core of that?
It feels like it's very much of that period. And in the case of the CLF Research S500, they didn't even have an S500 like that at the dawn of G&L. But I imagined what would it be like if they had taken like a Stratocaster in 1979, and what would they have done with it if they used that body shape? Well, it would have had magnetic field design single coil pickups. It would have the dual fulcrum vibrato.
Mhm.
It would have the vibrato arm would be in the early G&L style,
Mhm.
where it looks very much like a Fender one, but it's
Mhm.
this machined aluminum.
Mhm.
Of course, the headstock. So even while this is not, it's not like any kind of a reissue, it's very much in the spirit of what was happening in the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
but other models like L2000, CLF Research L2000, it returned to the early style control plate, which has
Mhm.
a very late 70s, early 80s look
Yeah.
to it, and George Fullerton's distinctive knobs, and of course the early G&L headstock.
Yeah.
But we also did things like the Doheny V12.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, why would that be a CLF Research one? They didn't do any kind of Jazzmaster-like thing here.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought, well, if they did,
Yeah.
what might it be like?
Yeah.
And the exploration that went into the pickups, where they're actually magnetic field design humbuckers,
Mm-hmm.
it was starting using some ideas that were in Leo Fender's lab.
Mhm.
And my brother John developed it further. And,
Cool.
and the early prototypes did not sound good. They were way too hot. It was trying to create something that hadn't existed before,
Mhm.
using inspiration from things we found,
Yeah.
but the rest of it we had to
Yeah.
kind of complete.
Complete,
And what
yeah.
came out at the end would be very much like, had they done this at the time,
Mm-hmm.
it would be very much like what we came out with as the Doheny V12.
That's cool. That's
So the CLF research models are kind of born out of the spirit and some of the aesthetics of the time,
Yeah. Yeah.
but not trying to be like a vintage recreation.
Yeah.
But as though we could go back in time and hang out with the guys and
In that mindset.
Yes.
Yeah. Fantastic. Wow. That sounds like a very inspirational atmosphere. You're working.
It's a lot of fun too. So
Yeah.
I thought rather than just introduce them without some kind of special kind of separation,
Yeah.
I want them to feel like a little special category for them.
Yeah.
And it gave me a chance to celebrate CLF research history.
Yeah.
So when we say, hey, this is the CLF research S500, it makes people ask, okay, what is CLF research?
Yeah.
Because G&L went 30 years
Yeah.
never talking about CLF research.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
the
the reason-
origins.
Yeah, the reason for us is because it was uncomfortable for us to talk about what was G&L before it was G&L.
Yeah.
It didn't come out of nothing.
Yeah.
It was already here. Well, what did it do? Well, first it made Music Man, and before that he worked on Fender things.
Yeah.
But then I personally became much more comfortable with this is how we came to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're just a continuation of Leo Fender's journey, and CLF research celebrates the whole thing.
Thanks for filling this gap in history for us here. You said like you have some era correct machines that you acquired over the years and that are used and will be used in the future. So can you tell us about these, or how they approached, how they came here to the building?
Ah.
You have some anecdotes.
Well, first of all, when you look in our factory, you see the workshop benches.
Yeah.
And you see they're made of what we call angle iron, just kind of 90-degree shaped iron, and it's cut and it's welded together with plywood, work surface.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at photographs of the old Fender company,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
look at the black and white photos in the 1950s, and you
Mhm.
see the workbenches look exactly the same. Workbenches, carts, the furniture of the factory, if you will.
Yeah.
That's how it was made. And when Leo Fender created the CLF Research Factory, he did it the same way.
Yeah.
Basically, this was a smaller version of his best practices, his best knowledge. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, of course, the shop benches were made the same way. In fact, made by the same man, Ronnie Beers, who worked for him at Fender, came to join him at CLF Research. And Ronnie Beers made a bunch of the benches and the carts here.
Okay.
And
yeah.
a couple of years ago, when I needed to have more benches and more carts as the company was growing,
Yeah.
I decided rather than just, you can buy nice workshops and things,
Yeah.
equipment today, but I wanted things to look like it's consistent.
Yeah.
I wanted to feel like, well, we're growing, but it shouldn't look like now it's becoming something else.
Yeah.
No, it's just going to become a bigger version of what it was.
Cool. Yeah.
So you'll see workbenches that look brand new, beautiful, and next to one that's a very old one, and I like to have them mixed up. So the mojo of the old is next to the mojo of the new.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Yeah.
In the case of the machines, in our wood shop down there, they made the same way with that angle iron, constructed the same way as the workbenches. You see things like the sanding machines with belts going around them. Those were, again, the same kind of machines that were used at the Fender company at the time. And Ronnie Beers just cut and welded up more of them here for CLF research. So these have been in operation here since the factory opened in 1976.
Wow.
We just keep them serviced, occasionally replace parts, but these were designed to last forever with changing some bearings or maybe a motor, but they can and will last much longer than I will. I'm certain of that.
Wow.
And in the case of the custom shop, our custom shop is where I take some of Leo Fender's machines, particularly things that he had bought. I showed you that bandsaw, for example.
Exactly.
That Delta Rockwell bandsaw. And some of the machines, they have a piece of tape on it with the year. That bandsaw was Leo Fender's bandsaw that was in his research and development lab at Fender. It was 1965, so it was new just before he moved out. And then when he moved out, he took that bandsaw and some of the other machines to his CLF research. His CLF research building, and when this was completed, those same machines came here and been on the production floor. So that bandsaw will have touched his work at Fender and across Music Man and across G&L, and those things we are restoring so that they can come to life in what I'm calling the fantasy wood shop. This is where we take some of Leo Fender's old machines, either ones that were specially made for the factory for special tasks, or ones that were kind of store-bought commercial machines, but they were his. And then we can bring them all together in one place and really celebrate what I call American greatness past and present, where if you look at that shop, there's a lot of American machines from a time when America really was great at manufacturing. You know, and I think when people are buying an American guitar, they'd like to think that I'm buying an authentic American experience. And having Leo Fender's own equipment being used to make the guitar, I think that's really cool.
That's absolutely cool. No shortcuts, hands down, original stuff. That's the custom shop is very exciting. You do like specials like S500s, Legacies, or Skyhawks without pickguards, stuff like that, where you have the pickups like front mounted, and it with very individual colors. So when did you start the custom shop, and how can customers approach their dream guitar with G&L? There's a lot of options, I guess. So.
there's a lot of options, but then of course there's many requests that we don't have on our option list. And we started it in 2018, and I realized a couple of things. In our main factory, since the beginning, we have had options. Right? So you could pick a model, and then you can choose this color from. You had many choices that you could make. And well after Leo Fender passed, in the late 90s into the early 2000s, the options grew and grew and grew. It was almost like the monster never stops eating more and more. Right? But it became somewhat difficult for the main factory to be able to handle all of the options, and we also realized that there are some of the customers that would like to choose things. Maybe they want more choices. But they also just wanted only your best people. They just wanted the best of experience, right? So while many of our customers considered what they bought from our main factory is to be like a custom shop guitar or equivalent quality to some custom shop things, it didn't have the freedom that some of those high-end customers wanted. So we realized what we should do is we should make a G&L custom shop, and that way we can do everything we were doing there with those options, and we can add much more and put the absolute best quality, have the time to hand select all of the woods.
Yeah.
So that way we could really provide the top end experience that those customers want.
Yeah.
So everything that it makes, I want to feel comfortable that we're calling it a G&L.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the things are getting a little bit out there, but it's not like you would come there and ask us to build a Les Paul. That's not our thing.
Yeah, yeah.
It should feel like something that's reasonably associated with Fender, Leo Fender. And then it's okay. But I really want it to be emphasize stuff that's G&L. I like to see magnetic field design pickups, things like that in them.
Yeah.
But it's where customers can go far beyond what they could with our main factory historically and have that kind of personal attention.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So yeah, all these models are here made in the very building from that era, built in the early 70s, you said, like 72 or something like this.
This building that we're in, you see down this street, there's I think 10 buildings. They all look about the same. Leo Fender bought this land, I believe, in 1967, and then he developed all these buildings with the idea that he could rent them out. So if you notice the way our building is, there's 10 front doors, 10 warehouse doors, so it's like little boxes, one after another.
Really?
So these buildings were designed so each one of these could be rented to a different, a different person or a different little factory. Or a different little shop. Right? But this was the same way the old Fender building was. Before CBS built that really big building. The old Fender building, which now has like auto body repair shops in it. But they have office front, warehouse back. And then there's a wall, then there's an office front, warehouse back. Okay. And what Leo believed is that if things are going well, he can expand by taking more of this space, the next one, the next one, the next one. But if things start going, it's not so good, economic difficulty, something, he could shrink back. Where if he has one big place and you enter a difficult time, there's nothing you can do. You can't make it smaller.
How far are we from the original Fender ground?
Oh, we're 1 mile.
Wow, that's amazing.
And 1/2 of the mile is just on Fender Avenue here.
Yeah, so we're having the same air.
Yeah. So he developed these buildings starting at that end of the street, and then early 70s now, he's got Music Man started with making the amplifiers, but then he had a vision. By 1975, he wants to prepare to make guitars and basses because he had a non-compete agreement with CBS. And it was about guitars and basses. So just no guitars and basses. You won't own a guitar and bass It's very common that if an owner sells this company, that they're not immediately going to go compete with them. You just paid a lot of money. That's not cool. But that's why this building, when it was completed in 1974, the next job was to have Ronnie Beers and other guys begin making the machines and buying machines to prepare the factory. And in 1975 and early 1976, George Fullerton and Leo Fender were personally focused on designing the first instruments that the CLF research factory would make.
Okay. And going overseas, you also have some exciting instruments that have the same core specs as the G&L classics, so to say.
Yes.
How long does the Tribute series, it's called, exist, and how many models does it feature at the moment? Roundabout?
The Tribute series launched in 2003.
All right.
And it was made in Korea by the Cork Company. So we've known them for many years, and of course they make many people's instruments these days.
They do.
But again, families know each other in this business for a very long time, so it was a natural choice to have the Cork family make them. But the key idea was G&L has distinctive features that, like if you look at an S500 guitar, it's got this magnetic field design pickups, it's got this dual Fulcrum bridge. There are distinctive G&L features that were just too expensive for many musicians because they were only available here in the U.S. US made in Fullerton factory. And I thought, this could be a great opportunity if we could take this experience of these G&L features,
the playability,
to the best of we can. But certainly things like the function of a dual fulcrum vibrato, the sound of the magnetic field design pickup, and take these key parts and send them over to a factory to build into a nice import instrument, and we just try to guide the rest of it, the instrument making part of it. But the key thing is that there's G&L features that couldn't be enjoyed by people because they were just simply too expensive. And if we could provide a way for them to enjoy these features, well, that would be great. So Tribute Series was able to take the G&L experience of the core features that make G&L sound and play differently.
Like the passive treble and bass control.
PTB control. And of course, if you look at L2000, with its twin MFD humbuckers, it's got the PTB, it's got the tritone circuit, so you've got series and parallel and the preamp switch and so forth. These things, you can't experience these at anywhere near that price point where a Tribute Series exists. So it was able to introduce the G&L kind of experience to a lot of people that otherwise it's like the USA stuff, it's just too expensive. You know?
So that's cool.
So it was really about taking that experience and making it more accessible to people.
That's great. We saw some very exciting content that you are further contributing to on social media and the newly designed website. Finishes like Andromeda Burst or Andromeda or Purple Burst. They can be super interesting for young and cutting edge bands. Also the Comanche video you released showed a modern approach at G&L. What can we expect in the future? You're doing these clips and you're doing this visibility. You're continuing on this.
So this is a kind of a fresh approach for us. I want to be able to integrate things where, like those small videos where you see me, I'm talking about a short video, maybe I'm talking about the PTB system, or I'm talking about the dual fulcrum vibrato, or maybe I'm talking about a whole model, like an ASAT special. What's special about this guitar? The pickups, what makes this a special experience? But then also have videos where it's not me talking, but it's just got a fresh look. You're just hearing what I call sights and sounds, where you kind of experience it as though it's in a cool context. You watch the Comanche video, this is a very modern sound in a better modern musical context. So on one hand, I might be talking about stuff that people find interesting. Okay, that's cool, I've learned about that. But now show me something cool. The other side, what you see with the Comanche video and the new SB2 video and the upcoming ASAT special video, those are going to be what I call the sights and sounds, where it's like, okay, you see cool, somebody cool in a cool situation, playing something that sounds really cool, and there's no speaking. It's any language. You don't need to. No one needs to say anything. You just look at it and you go, "That's cool." And I think musicians can get a good feeling about the musical context that's shown to them and go, I can see how that instrument could be good for me.
Absolutely. And I like the finishes. The finishes are really progressive and for a new generation of musicians.
The Andromeda one's pretty cool. I noticed at the NAMM Show, other people are trying to make stuff that looks like that now. That's cool, but we're also seeing a weird resurgence. A resurgence things like we're pretty famous for our metal flake finishes, and those sometimes they get popular, then they go back. But it's like lately we're starting to notice those are more coming back, and that's good for us because no one does them as well as we do.
That's great. So we look into a bright future, and it's great to see you on social media and on all these new platforms, like the CLF website, Instagram account that you set up. Where you dig out.
The CLF research, Instagram and Facebook, that's what I consider like a different kind of window into the company, into the brand. And it was really emphasizing showing historical things, showing old drawings, showing old prototypes,
Yeah.
giving people kind of a backstory for what was happening
Yeah.
with George Fullerton and Leo Fender, and what the fabric of this place was.
Yeah, and
in the time.
what's surrounding the
Yeah, and of course,
ideas.
what's shown on there is, of course, there's G&L, there's also Music Man stuff, and then going to the early Fender.
Yeah.
And in the case of some of the instruments, I will take parts that were prototype things or an old body, and I'll find the other parts in this place to finish it. Maybe I need to build a neck.
Yeah.
But then I take these things and build an instrument, and I get to tell the story of that model and what was happening at the time.
Yeah.
And going back to the early Fender time, in 1967 through 1969, Leo Fender was working on what was going to be, in his mind, the next two pickup guitar kind of positioned above the Telecaster.
Yes. Yeah.
And this model was going to have his split coil, single coil pickups, because that was his new direction, where you could get the single coils, but we called the Fender sound, but still hum canceling.
Yeah.
And it was going to have a new bridge design that was going to capture more string energy and get it into the end grain of the wood.
Yeah.
But and it also was going to have active electronics on it. So between 1967 and 68, he was doing the technical development. And that's where I think I showed you that guitar in his laboratory that it looks like a Telecaster body, which it was a Telecaster body. It was sent from Fender R&D would send him the body with nothing routed on top, just here's a Telecaster body, and then the routing of what he needed to put on top happened at CLF Research.
Yeah, yeah.
So the technical part of what it was developed in 67 and 68, and the styling was done in 1969.
And you have the original hand
Yes, of course, we have the drawings for it.
Yeah.
Now, by late 1969, it seemed like there was kind of a rush to get it completed before his 5 years as a consultant were completed. So there was technical work done, there was drawings done, even into November and December of 1969, right towards the end.
Yeah.
But nothing ever came of it, and no one had ever heard of this thing. Yet a lot of work was done. You know, not just a technical work, but really nice styling work was done.
Yeah.
This was going to be the next new Fender for 1970.
Yeah.
That was the expectation of at least the people who were working on it. Well, it didn't go anywhere, and I started showing people this prototype guitar and showing them the drawings, and then I realized, well, I can finish the song.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Interesting. That's interesting.
So it's kind of like we call it the Espada guitar now, which we launched a few years ago.
Yeah.
And we took the drawing. Actually, there was 3 different drawings, and we chose the one what we thought had the best styling.
The way you work at CLF.
So we took the drawing, and then we outfitted it with instead of the bridge that he had put on there, which was kind of complicated but effective in getting more sustain and energy from the string into the body. Yeah. We used the G&L saddle lock bridge. Yeah. Because 10 years later, he came up with an elegant solution that was much easier to achieve the result he wanted. Yeah. So we put the saddle lock bridge on it. The little split coil pickups on it, they were wound very lightly because it depended on the preamp that was inside of it. Well, by that time, we thought we'll use Leo Fender's magnetic field design technology. Make it basically a magnetic field design version of those pickups that were in the late 60s prototype. And where that one was active all the time, we thought, no, we'll let it be active or passive, just like you could, say, on some of the 1980s G&Ls or the L2000 bass. So it was taking, like, you've all heard of artists where they've, the artist has died, and then they found some old tapes from somewhere in the middle of their career, and it's rough and it's not complete. But someone who is very well versed in their style, not just the style they had at the time, but the style of their later work. And so we could take his whole body of work and apply that to that song to complete it.
That's great.
So
that's great.
That one to me is the most CLF research of all, because it's completing a lost Fender. It's the lost Fender guitar.
That's great. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Philippe.
Yeah, been a great talk.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
Yes. Cheers. Cheers.